What's up, Big Chief? What's up, man? Another day, another dollar. How's it going, everyone? Jay here, and we're going to be talking more about coffee. Today we're going to be demonstrating how to cup coffees. This cupping is both routine as well as a little bit different, because roasters that are really paying attention to what they're doing will always cup their coffees the day after or within a reasonable amount of time. And what you're doing is that you are tasting your production roast samples to make sure that your coffee is performing the way that you expect it to, right? So on today's cupping, we've got our espresso blend here. So we got 4 roasts of espresso blend and then 3 roasts of our decaf. And so what these are all just representative samples from each batch of coffee that we roasted yesterday. And now we're going to taste them to make sure that they are within specification and what we're looking for. Basically, that they taste the way that we expect them to. More importantly, they taste the way that you expect them to. Now, this one's going to be a little bit different in that we have an additional sample here. So we've got, while we have 7 roasts from yesterday, we have an 8th sample. And what this 8th sample is our espresso blend as it has been for the past several months. When you're dealing with blends, you're always going to have some kind of fluctuation in the supply chains, meaning that, you may not always have the same coffees. And even if you have the same coffees from the same farm, they're always going to change or be changing. We're taking a sample of our previous blend for the espresso, and we're just going to bring it along to make sure that we have achieved consistency in flavor profile. You have different components in a blend, and they will change throughout the year or maybe year to year or however. So the key is, once you've established a blend and a flavor profile, it's now your task to blend coffees in a manner that will consistently deliver that expected flavor profile. It's done in whiskeys, blended scotches, champagnes, wines, all kinds of different food products that require consistency from batch to batch, day to day, month to month, week to week, year to year. So for these four are representative samples from yesterday's espresso batch, and we're going to see how well they match up to this legacy coffee. The blend has changed. We introduced a new coffee into the mix, and we just want to make sure that it's doing right. So what we're doing is we're actually tasting the coffees, and now we're seeing to make sure that, hey, it's going to be consistent and it's what we want. All right, so let's get into it. What we've done is we've taken all of our samples, we've measured them out into 13 grams and put them into these 9-ounce Gibraltar cups, and that's what we're going to use to evaluate the coffees. Now, here's the thing. You can use really any size vessel. You can use any amount of coffee that you feel that's proper. The important thing is just to do it consistently. That way, every time you do it, you're working with relative consistent parameters so that it makes evaluation more even. Now, as you'll also notice, we only have 1 sample of each of the coffees. This is just basic QC testing. This is not really a critical evaluation of the coffees. Like you'll see for critical green coffee evaluation, we'll do 5 samples of each cup because we're looking to see if there's defects in that coffee and the frequency of those defects. We're not necessarily worried about the frequency of defects here because we've already purchased the coffee. We've already gone through that with each of the coffees that are in here. So we know the defect count, we know the quality of the coffee. Now we're just looking to see, is our daily roast production performing the way that we want it to? And that's the biggest difference. All right, we've got all our samples. As you can see, what we're also looking for is, it's going to be a little bit hard to see, but you can see here, this is our control. This is roast number 2, roast number 1. You can kind of see it, but if you look, I'm zooming in. The roast consistency is quite on the money. What we're looking for is roast profile to be similar and consistent across the board. That's super important. I'm not really going to be scoring this. If I do have any major problems, I can make notes and reference it for that, and also take yesterday's roast log. If there's any kind of problem or question, I can refer to the roast log to see what happened. If there's any further questions, I can go to the computer, pull up the actual profile for each of the roasts, and then review that to see if there's anything that could have gone haywire that we need to address for future roasts. So first things first, we're going to be reviewing the fragrance. And the fragrance is the dry smell of the coffee. That means I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to shake it around a little bit just to excite the coffee and release some of the air, the fragrance. Lots of warm tones, rich coffeeness, cacao, maybe some spice like a light cinnamon, some nuts. Okay, good, good. Now that's a reference control. So that's what we want to, that's kind of what we're trying to match to, so that our customers and our guests don't come into the shop or to the restaurants and taste and like, what's happening to the coffee? Okay, so this one's very similar. A lot of cacao, a lot of nuttiness, little hints of cinnamon too. However, the big difference here is that there's a more sharpness. There's a little bit more of what I would say is like a, not sharp, but sharpness in the matter, like kind of like a brightness, like a acidic tone on the nose. Well, relatively the same there, good. Looking good, smelling good, smelling good. Very nice, very nice. So we're getting good consistency on the fragrance of the espresso. So the next three are the decaf coffees from Nariño, Colombia. And this uses an ethyl acetate, or what we call EA, decaffeination process. The ethyl acetate is actually derived from sugar cane. So let's have the fragrance of this coffee. Oh, clean, very clean, crisp, light coffeeness. It's pleasant. There's a little bit of fruitiness, maybe like tropical fruits. I want to say kumquats and apricots are probably what I'm getting. This one's a little bit different. This is a little bit warmer in tone for the fragrance. Interesting. Not as much with the tropical notes. I wonder if there's any difference, like how much of a difference it is. I think the roast profile looked the same. For this particular coffee, we're starting off at 205 Celsius and then finishing it off at 208 Celsius. There is a difference in the time. There's as the roaster's getting warmer, I can see that we've jumped, wow, almost a full 2 minutes in time. This roast took 10:15. So we're following the basic parameters, 205 to 208 Celsius for the entire roast profile. This one took 10 minutes, 35 seconds. Number 2 took 12 minutes, 22 seconds. And then number 5, 6, and 7. Number 7 took back to 10:39. So we're having some fluctuation in the way that the coffee roasted. And I'm wondering, like, perhaps, I think between the two roasts, between 5 and 6, why this is longer is we had a little bit of a cooling time between these two roasts, which probably led to longer roast times here, and then back to the 10:35 here. So there is a bit of a difference to be expected. However, the fragrance is very much in order. Our water should be ready. Let me go grab that. Okay, so we've got our boiling water, and what we're going to do is we're now going to start our timer. What we want to do is we want to set our timer to 4 minutes. Now we've got 4 minutes, we're going to pour the water onto each of the samples, and we do want to do it with relative quickness because we want to try to make sure that the samples are brewing at the same time. All right, so let's get to it. We're just taking the water off the boil, and make sure as you pour it, you're going to saturate all of the grounds, and we bring it right up to the edge. So the more professional you are, the faster you can do this. Let's see if we can do without spilling over any of them. All right, great. We're going to add some more water to our rinse cups. And these are just cups that we're putting here so that we can rinse off our cupping spoons. Now, while the first 4 minutes are going, we're going to smell the wet aroma of the coffee. So just bend down, get close, put your nose into it, and just inhale deeply. So what I'm looking for with these four, again, is consistency, not just between themselves, but also with the control. My nose tells me that these are very similar. They're almost identical to each other, and they're very similar to the control. The biggest difference is they're slightly brighter on the nose. And that makes sense. The coffee's, of course, one of the bigger components that we've changed in this coffee is completely different than the previous one. So there's going to be some variance, but I think it's going to be quite fine. All right, now into the decafs. Again, the decaf gives a lot of warm tones. There's actually like a brown sugar kind of note to it that I think is really pleasant. It's really a nice coffee, and I'm looking forward to tasting it. And now we've had enough time for the coffee to brew. Now we're going to do what we call the break, which means I'm going to get really down into the coffee, nose really close to the coffee bed, and then break the crust while inhaling deeply. And this is going to allow you to capture any kind of aromatics that are hanging out beneath the crust. Now, in between each one, I'm going to rinse the spoon. Some bright tones. Oh, that one's kind of tropically fruity. Oh, similar. The brightness is kind of very pleasant. All right, I'm going to switch now waters because that one's getting kind of full. Ooh, that's a nice warm, really warm and rich, kind of like comfortable feeling coffee aroma. That one has a little bit more of a robust tone. Oh, and that one we're back now to the more of a warmer tone. So that makes sense because we have a little bit of a longer roast profile here, which means that there's going to be a little bit more development. So a little bit more roasty, a little bit more fuller in the aromatics makes sense compared to these two, which have really nice warm coffee tones. Okay, so next up, we're going to skim off our tops. And this is really just about removing whatever's floating at the top of the cups. And again, we're going to rinse between each. Okay, so now that we've got everything cleaned up and ready to go, it's been about 10 minutes total time since we started the brewing process. So that's allowed the coffee to cool down quite a bit. And that's a good time for you to actually start to do your tasting. Now I've got my little spit cup here, and I'm going to take my cupping spoon, and I'm going to now pull a little bit of sample from each one, bring it to my lips, slurp it across the palate. And what you want to do is think of a spray gun, right? If you have a spray gun that pss, 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 like this, it's going pss, 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 pss. Let that be kind of the idea in your mind, what you're trying to do to your palate. You want to slurp and let your palate be coated completely by the coffee so that you get the full maximum experience from it. Let's give it a try. This is our control. Now, if you notice, I'm only putting just a little bit, right? Not too much. That's exactly what we're looking for. Nice, rich cacao notes, a little bit of caramelness to it, some nice tropicalness, not tropical, but some nice berry fruit undertones, and then like a nice clean finish, a little bit of nuttiness, right? This is really what we're looking for. So hopefully our attempts at the new blend will be just as enjoyable. So on sample number one, the cacao is much more defined, much more bolder, much more richer, much more deeper. There's fruitiness, but it's quite diminished. But the boldness, it's really a bold, kind of fuller-bodied, medium to full-bodied, like punch, which is nice. Yeah, that's it. That's good. That's got nice, rounder, like cacao tones. Like the cacao is deep and powerful in this one. Much more deeper and powerful than in the control. That one has a lot of cacao, but it's a little bit on the brighter side, a little bit more. The cacao is definitely more reserved in the control. Yeah, very similar. Very nice. Yeah, nice. This one's a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit slightly brighter toned. Good consistency across the board there. And still lots of similarities with the control. The cacao is nicely developed across the sample, so I'm very happy about that. The fruitiness is really light tone, and then the finish is very clean, and that's really what we're looking for. So the idea is that it's not an exact match, of course, from the control. However, it's very close, and that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for consistency in our blending. So what we're looking for is nice deep cacao notes, some fruit tones, and then clean nutty finish. We can achieve that. That's really the goal for the coffee. And we're looking for more what we call medium roasts. And I think it brings a lot of that nice Maillard reaction, a lot of sugar development. And I think that just makes it a beautiful, beautiful coffee. That these are really lovely, lovely coffees. All right, so let's move on to the decaf. Clean, bright, same. Quite nice. These are like clean, bright, lots of tropical notes. Like again, with the apricots and kumquats, I think is what I'm getting. The nice sweetness to the coffee that's reminiscent of brown sugar. Oh, that's really lovely. Everything we've tasted today, the 2 different coffees from all the 7 roast batches, they're all relatively consistent. They're all very nicely done. Now, I noticed we talked about earlier with the decafs, the difference in the roast times, 10:15, 12:25, 10:35. And I was really surprised not to see a tremendous difference in the actual flavor profile between the 3. So this one, we definitely had a difference in the fragrance, right? There was it was deeper, a little bit different. But actually the flavor in the cup is, gosh, pretty much the same. So that's quite nice. So this is pretty much what we do for every batch of coffee that we roast. We pull a sample from it, and then the next day we sit down and we cup and make sure that the coffee is performing the way that we want it to before we send it out. That way, you know, you get what you want to have and what you'll enjoy. And that to me is really important. So if you're enjoying this kind of coffee content, be sure to subscribe. And if you'd like to try any of the coffees yourself, please check out sprocoffee.com. We've got all the coffees here. This is the Spro 99, and this is our EA decaf. So you can order those online. We actually have subscriptions, so you get 10% off every month, and we'll send, or whatever frequency you want, and once a week, once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, once a month, however often you want. Give it a try. Hope you'll enjoy it. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll have more videos coming to you soon. See you next time.